What would you do if a student said they deserved a higher grade? What would you do if a student said they aren't going to do work in front of everyone? What would you do if you had a student who said your class was boring? And he just looks at me and says, "Can you please stop talking?"
Stay tuned because we are sharing our best behavior tips to encourage positive attitudes.
Hi, art teachers.
Hey, art teachers. I'm Liz Brent, and I'm a secondary art teacher from the Chicagoland area.
I'm Kyle Wood, and I'm an elementary art teacher in the Chicago area.
Story time about a student who had an attitude one day, and I helped them reset. So I had this student come in, and she was like, "Don't nobody talk to me today." And she went, sat down, put her head down, hood up, everything. And so then this one girl tried to pick at her, one of her friends, like, "Hey, what's wrong with you?" Yada, yada, yada. And she kind of nudged, like, leave me alone, leave me alone. So I told her, stop, don't engage, let her have her moment. And I got class started as usual, checked in with everybody. And then I went and checked in on her. And I asked, what was going on, how she was doing, how could I help? And she was just like, somebody made me mad in the last class. Can I please just have some time to calm myself down? So I was like, okay, how long you need? She's like, look, just give me a couple minutes. I'm like, okay, I will leave you alone. I won't talk to you. I was about to head over in 5 minutes and she was already sitting up, doing her own thing. She still kept quiet, didn't really talk to anybody, but she was able to engage in the class. So sometimes I just give students the space they need for a few minutes. Welcome to the Art of Ed's Draw the Line,
where we tackle the wild and tricky behavior situations
art teachers face every day. What would you do if a student demanded special privileges such as special supplies, going first, or preferential seating?
In my mind, there's a big difference between asking and demanding. If a student is asking politely, I'm going to hear them out and consider what modifications they're seeking. But if they are rude and disrespectful making demands, always remember, no is a complete sentence. Don't engage with that. A lot of this comes down to your behavior management system. I am a big believer in making exhibiting desired behaviors the easiest path to reach their goals. So, for example, if a student is running because they want to get first in line, I am sending them to the back of the line. I'm pulling them out to talk to them about how to walk safely in the classroom. I'm doing everything I can to slow them down and get in the way of that goal of them being first. On the other hand, if a student takes time and pushes in all the stools around them and is helping out in the classroom, I just might move them up to the front of the line. If you incentivize what you want to see, you'll see more of it. What would you do if a student said they deserved a higher grade?
I would ask them to show me how and why, and we would look at their work together. I would also thank them for advocating for themselves because that is definitely not easy to do for everyone. Looking at their work, I would show them how I graded it and how they got the score that they did. And in that process, sometimes I have seen that, hey, maybe the student does deserve a higher grade, and I have no problem changing it if it can be justified. Sometimes when we're grading, we might miss something, or maybe a student can explain a part of their work that we might miss just looking at it. So always be open to that kind of conversation. It's of course always great to have your grading policies out in the open and explain to the students, how you plan to grade the assignments in advance, but also have a self-assessment for them. This can be something that you show them day one when you introduce the project, but also before you grade them, allow them to grade themselves. Include questions with that. So instead of them just scoring themselves, have them answer questions about each specific criteria. Sometimes you'll see that helps them to understand the grading process better. And a lot of times they are more hard on themselves with grading than you might be.
I was once working with a student who went to extremes with work avoidance. I'm talking, he would run out of classroom, rip things up, you get the picture. One day, I'm doing my normal thing, trying to talk to him, asking, what's going on? What can we do to help? All that sort of stuff. And he just looks at me and says, "Can you please stop talking?" So I did. After a moment of silence, he looks at me confused and says, "Why am I not saying anything?" I wrote down, "I'm listening." A minute later, he really opened up and said, he's not mad at me. He was just frustrated from being yelled at before he got into my room. And we made great progress after that.
What would you do if you had a perfectionist student who kept getting stuck? First thing I say is, hey, maybe you need to take a break. Take a step to the side, look at your work from a distance, or ask them to tell me, what is it you're getting stuck on?
It can often be a good strategy to just tell them to work on something else and then come back to the area where they were struggling. For example, if a student's working on a portrait and they're struggling with the nose, I might tell them to work on the other features. I'll use the analogy of a puzzle. It's a lot easier to see what fits into that space when all the other pieces are in place around it.
As a recovering perfectionist myself, I know that sometimes I do need to just step away and leave things alone before I overwork it. And a lot of times I might just need to do something different that day and just pick it up the next few days.
I always tell students they don't need to compare themselves to anyone else. The only comparison they should make is to their former selves, because we're focused on growth. And as long as they're doing better than they used to be, we're on the right track.
Have set check-in times for the students to kind of take a break from their work. So maybe that's getting up, moving around the room and looking at everybody's work at one time. Maybe it's having little creative challenges or little mini projects in between things. But sometimes they won't give themselves a break, and you have to give them a break without telling them it's a break. Another tip is to set a timer for them. Let them know that once the timer is up, it is time to move on to the next thing. This can be between 5 and 10 minutes.
While perfect may not be achievable, I do think it's reasonable to ask every single student to give me their best. Do you have reluctant learners in your room? Learn how to engage them with unexpected and unusual work with the Pro Pack Motivating Reluctant Learners. We'll leave a link in the description box below with more information about how to get these professional development videos. What would you do if a student said they aren't going to do work in front of everyone?
I'll give them a little bit of time. I'll just respond playfully like, okay, I'll check back with you in a minute. And I'll check in with everybody else. And then I'll come over, talk to them and ask to speak to them privately. In that conversation, I'll say, how are you doing? What's going on? In that process, I would offer for them to take a break if they need to, get a drink of water. I would also use them as a class helper. So maybe they can help me pass out some supplies first and then get to work. I include a survey at the beginning of the year where I say, how should I approach you if you're having a bad day or if you're not really feeling like, engaging in class? And a lot of times they'll tell me exactly how. They might say, I don't want to talk, maybe write me a note. Or they might say, can you pull me to the side and talk to me privately? So use that information to help you know how to best help that student.
I always try to greet students at the door and give a friendly goodbye on the way out. I'm not like a jerk in between, but I'm making a point to be sure that we start every day and end every day in a kind way to keep that positive association with the art room.
What would you do for a student who doesn't care and rushes through their work?
This one can be tough because students might rush for different reasons. Be mindful of IEPs and needs to segment instructions, provide breaks, and other accommodations that might be needed. Assuming it's a student who is capable of sustained attention, but they're rushing for other reasons, I would talk to them, first stating what I'm noticing, and then asking them what's going on. I might say something like, I noticed you colored really solidly in this area, but in the background, I'm seeing a lot of the white of the paper showing through. What's your plan here? Here are a couple strategies you might use to help students slow down and make sure they're producing their best quality work. Break up that independent work time by setting a timer for 5 minutes of quiet, focused work time, and set the expectation that all students are working or revising their work for that entire time. Print some checklists of look-fors for students. Include things like put their name on their paper, colored all of the positive and negative space neatly, all of those things that are markers of good quality work. Set the pace by segmenting instructions and guiding students through key steps of the process. If early finishers seem to be racing to move on to a preferred activity, set a minimum work time. If students insist their work is finished, you can tell them to show it to a friend and ask for feedback in areas of growth.
One way I encourage a positive attitude in the art room is by being a positive, bubbly person. So every day I try to be just very energetic. I greet students as they come in by name. I'll even say like, happy Monday, happy Tuesday, or whatever day it is. And some of them look at me like, she's got so much energy and it's too early for that. But I keep doing it, and it's just a great way to keep the spirits up in the classroom. I also like to start the class period with a question of the day. I got this from a colleague of mine, and it may be something random like super salad. What do you call this, pop or soda? Or it may say, what are you looking forward to this weekend? So it's a question that they talk about at the beginning while I'm taking attendance. They discuss it with their tables, and then we share out before we get the class started. So it's a great way to get to know each other better, share our interests, get them talking, and just really open up the space with positivity.
What would you do if you had a student who said your class was boring?
I usually say, why? Why do you think it is? What is it that's boring to you? And a lot of times they'll say, oh, this project is just whatever. I wish we could do this or that, which ultimately comes down to them not being engaged. So for engagement, at the beginning of the year, I try to get them to write down what it is they have always wanted to learn about art, or something they've always wanted to learn to make, or what it is they like to make. And I kind of use those to guide them throughout our projects.
This is one I always turn back on the students. I point out that with most experiences in life, we're going to get out of it what we're looking for and what we put into it. So if they're expecting it's going to be boring, they're probably going to be bored during their work. I also point out there are lots of opportunities to make it more fun by integrating their own personal outside interests. At the end of the day, I'm not an entertainer. I'm an educator. I'm a facilitator. I create opportunities for them to create awesome work, but they have to be active participants in their own learning.
So incorporating choice is a great idea, but sometimes it's also just a great idea to give them like a little challenge or an extra little short fun thing to do in the time period. So that way it breaks up the time and it keeps their attention.
Sometimes students will say something's boring because it's too easy and they need to be challenged. On the other hand, sometimes students will say it's boring because it's embarrassing to say they don't know how to do it. They're scared that they're going to fail. Strong differentiation can also really help with that engagement. Make sure it's the right level of difficulty for your students.
If you don't want to miss any more of our best behavior tips to help you draw the line in your art room,
be sure to like this video and subscribe to The Art of Ed.
We can't wait for the next episode when we chat about studio work.
Let us know in the comments below how you draw the line when it comes to attitude in the art room.
We would love to know your tips about fostering positivity.
Bye, stay tuned, and we'll see you next episode.